Okay, so we're going to begin the practice base of your base layer, which for most of us in restorative seems to be our sitting zone, or it can be the full spine wave. So we're going to start with those two elements today. So when you're sitting and you take a belt and you want to buckle up a belt so it's in a reasonably wide enough loop that if you're sitting into the hoop, the loop hoop, you're going to make sure it's connected so it's a circle, that you're going to slide up so that it reaches to the upper back. And I'm discovering, working with people, seeing people with it, and just myself as well, is the higher up, the more support you're going to feel. However, it has some concern for some people how high it goes into the pits. So make it comfortable enough that you can actually push back into the pose. So you actually rock back and then you start to lift up. And this core bundle might feel like not such a stomach strengthener to begin. So let it be a little subtle with the wave of energy from your center line, especially the back body. It opens up the back. And as the legs start to move up, I want you to work with lifting up the back of the legs. If the resistance on the belt seems a little bit worrisome for you, you're not sure if it's going to hold the belt. That's fine. So you want to feel confident that nothing's going to break, right? We wouldn't want that challenge with our nervous system. So we make sure that it's stable, because you want to feel like you can actually put some energy into the position. And if you practice this over a period of time, a few times a week, I think you'll start to feel where the connection is at the back of the leg. And you start to make kind of this runway at the back of the leg for the belt it's used to. So it kind of digs in, but at some point you're used to that experience in that part of the back of the upper back of the knee. Now that's an important area, right? The upper back of the knee to lengthen, right? It gets crunched into. So if I bend the knee, then that's not necessarily an opposite of lengthening. It still allows me to lean back more. Now arms possibly go forwards. And then attention to letting your eyes maybe find a still point, or if perhaps you can close them, and cycle your awareness through the conscious connection of the center of the body, the soft belly, knowing that a soft belly is a strong belly. Finding that center of gravity. Anytime you can hold the legs, and you can also go back to bending them further or straightening them out. Now, hands to the floor. So get a feel for the hands pressing down into the ground as if you were going to mobilize yourself to lift up. So we're going to just have that reality of the hands pressing. No focus on actually getting that momentum and lifting your hips up, but feel the proper motion of your elbows just a little bit back, and then bending the knees and lowering down the feet. And can you be in this position? If the belt's a little too tight, you can always loosen it up. Can you be in this position and then feel the arms go back forward with the feet down? That's the key, is the feet are touched down. The legs are kind of glued together. You don't have to energize the thighs to squeeze, because the belt does all that work. So take one more time. When you slide back, your feet slide back towards your seat. You lean back, tip back. If you touch your bolster, no big deal. It's nice to have a bolster buddy to hold you up. And then finally, we'll go one more time. The leg path lifts up, so the back space reaches with more muscle than before. Just how we set that up. Now, see if you can actually lean your upper back so the neck doesn't have as much roundedness. into your Navasana pose. Yeah. So the alignment is to feel where the legs have this pretty sharp reach. And then hold on to the back of them, bend the knees and lower down and carefully bring your body weight into your seat, unbuckle. And then as you take your belt directly below your feet, you're going to hold on, make sure that the buckle is not right under your feet, right? Something a little bit softer, just the belt. And then reach your elbows to your legs and lean back and push the feet towards the ceiling. Yeah, maybe it has a place in your practice to go all the way through the pose path. But feeling the difference when you're free from being belted up everywhere. And as the hands are far reaching, you do want to have them kind of as high up as they'll go. So if you found that you're a little bit elbowed bending, you might bring your feet down, bring your hands as far forward to the feet as they might reach. And even if the knees are bending, that's okay. I want you to feel that reach of the back muscles. That's the key, is the back is reaching. So if I straighten my legs, it doesn't necessarily stretch my back anymore, right? So find how your back reaches. Now a little bit of a humbling position. So we bend the knees, we let our head tilt down, we lower down, but feel the feet forward from your knees. Push full energy of pressure into the hands and then lower down. And as you take the belt off, you're going to put it back behind you and then slide your seat back to the bolster. Place a block into your hands, and as you lean your hips back so they're a little bit away from your bolster, there's necessary space between your seat and the ribs. And you'll tuck the block under the back of your pelvis and ensure that when you lower down your head to your blankets, see if you can see me okay. I think so. Let me know if you can't. Make alarming hand signals, okay, if you can't. All right, so we have the bolster horizontally under our ribs, and now from all that core work, it feels like the core can restore. So I've got a block flat under the back of my pelvis, and I have the whole line of energy in the back of the body stretching by lifting it up. And if you have a sandbag, I would encourage you to put any bag of weight to the lower core body. So you think of the stomach maybe as a piece of awareness for your core. But let's consider when we straighten our legs now, that the front of the hip bones, right, are a balancing range for the two parts of the core, like you have the right and the left side. And as you work your hands to reach for your belt, find it, hold it overhead, and let yourself fidget enough that you are exploring the space in the front of the body, which really includes all the parts, right? From the top of the foot, top of the knee. And that might mean you take your feet wider apart so it's more comfortable for your back. Interesting, if you stretch the feet to a little bit more width in the stance below you, you also might find that the feet still turn out. And that's okay for this one today. So I want you to let your front body explore that range. And the reach of the hands is almost similar to how the legs are. And not that everyone chose the legs having a wide stance, but it could be similar for some of us here. So connecting to the source of supportive breath. Eyes may be gliding to a close. And feel the spaciousness in the front of the body. and the awareness of the next breath. Now, if your feet are passive, feel if you can connect to the motion of your thighs. So if you ever think of moving your legs directionally in or out, do you work the legs by the feet or do you work from the core? That's something to kind of just become slightly interested in the centerpiece of the body supporting that movement, right? Because a lot of our movement comes from also from our hips and our pelvis. It's kind of the origin, your center of gravity. So when you slide your legs closer as they can go, you're going to bring your belt so it goes straight over the chest. So you reach up with your hands holding the belt wide and go as far with the hands holding the belt where you feel the upper back slightly tone. So think about toning versus weight training. We don't have a weight right now in our hands, but this is working on the tone. So I want you to keep that belt so it's straight over the chest or somewhere in that range. And then as we bring the belt back overhead, feel the arms in this wide stance. Inhale, belly is softening there. And exhale, belly relaxes towards the spine, belt goes up over the chest. So you move your arms and the belt back to that second position. And last time, overhead. The legs are maybe a little closer this time, right? They're as close as they could comfortably become. And then last time, belt goes over the chest. Now move the belt down so it rests on you, and we'll take the sand off to the side and move your knees to their bending pattern and moving a leg in. So take the right leg in, so you get a feeling of it moving towards your chest, and feel if you have this amount of bulk under your body, if you can work your belt under your right foot and then lift up, so we're all on the right side, so it'll be easier to go with the directions, but as the right foot scoops up the belt, feel if the leg can go into these alternating pulses of bending and straightening, or straight-ish. Doesn't have to be full, but less likely that your hyperextension difficulty will occur when you're in this inversion compared to if you're sitting. So you might find a straight leg could be useful for the knee. And just keep it so it's at a still position now. Slide your hands down towards your center on the belt so it's easy on your wrists. And as you flex that right foot, push into the belt, which is around the ball of your foot, and feel the position of pushing. Kind of notice in your psyche when you let your leg kind of motion into the belt at the foot, do you feel the energy of pushing? Or does it just feel like the leg is up and you got a belt on it and there's no energy? But I want you to try to work with a little bit of deliberate push with the foot. Okay, now we're going to move the left foot up into the belt and switch the side so the right foot comes down. Reach your hands up a little higher on the belt, bend through the left knee and straighten. And relax your worry around, should my leg go farther back or is it in the right actual intended direction? It might be useful for you to study the circulation from this side and feel if it's challenging, different types of challenges around the back of the hip, a little bit steady with the reach of the leg, flex the left foot, And if you want to come to stillness anytime in the near future with the leg up, side down, come into this range and slide the hands down. Important here so that the upper back is calm, but toned through the arms. So flex through the foot, feel that reach through the leg, try to push a little bit into the belt, and maintain the right foot centered, and the knee is in the midline. It's not rotating out on the right leg. Good. Okay, so now as we start to soften that left knee, reach the hands up as high and slide the belt off and bring your feet to cobbler's pose, knees out, feet together. We're going to take a few moments here, just in awareness of the pelvis. Okay, just a few moments, because we will revisit this fairly soon. So feel what it's like when the pelvis is lifted with the block. Now move the knees in together, push down into the feet and lift up your hips and slide the block away with your hand. And as you start to roll to your left hip, you're going to actually turn to the left and then slide your body so that it is joining with the bolster, giving the bolster a hug with your ribs. So if you have a sandbag and a ball, you're going to get those close by and place the ball on the inside of the right leg and the sand on the exterior right hip. Okay, so place attention where the level of support right now is not subtle, right? You have your bolster and your blankets for under your head and maybe a block for overhead, but with that exploration of the length of your side, can you breathe across the sides or feel the motion from the hip, then elongating the side beam. And as the flow from the flex to the extended spine, it's more an extension of the spine here. Can you place your hand onto support? It could be a block, it could be a stack of towels, it could be a really low bench, right? Or a stool, those work too. But when you're working with this side to range the motion wider, you've got to kind of turn a little bit towards the ceiling without torquing your neck. So feel the weight of your head down into the blanket. That's essential. And then explore where the arm range feels the most supported for your back muscles. I think this is a really good one for our circulation through our arms, through our chest, kind of the vested chest. And let that right leg find support, whether it's a block or a ball underneath it. Come into side sage pose. And feel where the range of breath lifts into the rib cage. Good, so relaxing your eyes. Sensitivity to the movement of breath. Stretching the breathing muscles. And feel that you're just now getting into an awareness of creating breathing space, right, for your internal dialogue between the organs and the muscles. When in doubt, breathe in and out. Now it's quite ambitious to let that arm have direction, whether it's overhead and it's simply finding a still position, or if it radiates open from the chest and towards the sky. So you're turning and rolling on the back of your head, which is on the blankets. So this depends on the sand, right? If you have sand really high up, this will mean you lose it, right? So if the arm stretches out, feel the circulation in your spine becoming a twist. It's a counter twist, so you don't have to practice every one of the options, but this is one. And I want to encourage you just to get a feel for this side, kind of draw a line of awareness scanning the right side of the body. If there has been an advantage to the opportunity, just to be in the shape here on the right side opening. And then we're going to come into a rotation to the left now. And if you've got that sand on, you want to just tip it off of your side. You're going to turn and lift up your body and face the under down to the props. And I want you to turn the bolster. So I got to get rid of the ball. But turn the bolster, tip it up so it's lengthwise back on top of the blankets. And then we'll get our block. It's across town. So grab your block, and that right side has that awareness. So we're going to level it back to the center field. Okay, getting your belt, getting a block under each leg. Circulation education is what we do here in this class, I think. I'm a circulation guide. Okay, then as you get that belt connected, you're going to make it into a fairly wide loop. I'll start with kind of a small one and just see where I go. So as I get the belt around over my head and around my center, I want you to loosen up the strand of the belt so that you can reach it to the top of your feet and then slide the buckle so it's an easy reach for you to monitor the intensity on the legs. So we want to feel like the legs have been basically strapped from the back of the pelvis to the ankles, which is a really kind of curious wave of circulation for the adductors. So you could bump up the blocks if it's hurting your knees or if it feels a little bit awkward quite yet to lower down. If the blocks are pretty high and you go to the back bend, it might feel a little intense, right? So this could be a little more back bend. It's different if the knees are up or the knees are down. So when you lower back, you'll push into your bolster. So you are ensuring the sacrum very close. The knees are going to be supported and elevated by the blocks under the thighs. Some will put the block under the knees, but you might contour the block so they're kind of turned, pivoting, right? So I don't have it flat or like that. It's kind of pivoting to support the skin, right? So I want it to jab a little bit into my skin. And then I'll add a sand idea. Some of you might want sand across your feet. Some have a couple sandbags and you can put one on each thigh. And then there is the predictable opportunity for sandbag breathing. Okay, so my sand is lower than my sternum, right? So if you are tapping on your chest, you're going to be a little bit lower, only low enough that you can still hold the lobes. I think of this as the lobes of the lungs, right? Being kind of fanning to the side with the weight down into them. So you're using the weight to strengthen the breathing muscles. So it's a good idea to breathe with the sand on you versus kind of backing off. So I stretch the arms back behind me for this one, reaching behind. Interlace your fingers. Be sure your blocks are stable. If they feel like they're slipping, then you might want to reset. And as the hands are back over, interlace and press. Gradually lengthen. Take the time to bend and straighten. Bend and straighten. Right, we did this with the leg recently. So we work with the arms, bending and lengthening. Good. And then when you feel that motion of the arms back, try to maintain that what's called Usta Hastasana, right? So we have the arms overhead pushing. You never know if you hear that word Hastasana, and you'll have to lift your arms up and reach. So if the arms are behind you, do you feel the back body when the arms go overhead, or does it make any sense that that's the connection? To me, it's pretty much not the connection. So I feel the front body for me and the ribs. Now, if the wrists get tired, notice that. This is important to notice. Oh, my wrists are fatigued. I'm not putting pressure down on them, so I know it's not going to maybe harm them in that way. But if it's fatigue setting in the wrists, then you're going to work your way towards letting your arms relax down by your sides. And you might lower the blocks down. This could be a good opportunity to shift your leg stretch. Feel the awareness and the invitation to gradually feel this pose, reclining cobbler's pose. Approach the ribs with the breath filling up near the sand. And as you exhale, the breath spreads and releases, sweeping the lungs. Let the breath refresh you. Feeling stability, serenity in some areas of the body, or the opportunity to pause and support the parts of the body that are usually contracted. Just let them phase into a restorative shape. Soft belly. Now with the feet pushing firm to each other, is it the outer corner of your foot that touches, or do you get into the soles pressing? So, notice how the foot concentrates itself in this position. It's going to go to whatever habit it wants to, no matter what you try, right? It will still find its habitual state of togetherness, however it relates. So I encourage you to let the inside of the foot open, like it's like you're opening and cracking open the feet, so you let them open. That's important here. So when we do transition, you want to kind of feel the opportunity in the pose first, like this is the foot position, the inner thighs stretching open. And then as you unbuckle, you'll bring your knees so that they slide down. So your feet slide down first, and then the legs are relaxed. Shake them out. Maybe let them do a little bit of a tantrum, pressing into the floor. Slide the sand away. Slide that left foot in, and you'll bring that right foot up, cross it to the left ankle, and take a ball and place it on the upper outer left thigh. Tilt your body weight into the ball and hold the right knee. So get a feel when you grasp it that your leg is going a little bit across town. It's going slightly towards you, but your pattern today is to feel what the left foot is doing. Do you know where your left foot is? there's a little bit of extra sensory conversation right with your hips. So you might go, I don't know exactly if my foot matters, but feel how the kind of the corner, the outer band of that foot. We were recently in cobbler's pose, which means foot, right? Cobbler. So we have our feet together, the knees out, and the underline of the little toe line, that's what you touch on the floor. So you want to keep that same here, right? So it's the same. My feet aren't touching, but I didn't break that dedication of the side of my foot on the floor. And that's important for the knee. It's important that you're holding that stability and that tone. So if you do hold your right knee, it's up to you, no requirements. Just that we're breathing and that we're holding space for practice. So even if you wander away, you're still holding space, right, for the group. So that's good to know. Now the right arm is passive on this version. Okay, feel enough of the hip stretch. Try to give it enough time that you're letting it sink in to your right hip. Okay. Now lower the left hand down. Feel the shoulder blades squeeze back into the bolster. Make it so that each of the poses have a very specific setting in the bones. If that's hurtful in your back, then soften. See if you can let that soften into it. And then bring the knees back center, uncross. Left foot lifts up and crosses to the right knee. We push the block away. Use a ball, ideally, to the upper outer right thigh. So you are stuffing the ball in to the connector of the thigh into the hip. And then as you lean your weight into that ball, be clear that you are kind of nudging the ball and trying to squish it. And then hold the left knee if you would like. No requirement. No sand. Okay. So kind of tease the awareness on the outer bones of the right foot. Kind of notice, how does that foot secure itself? In fact, your dominant foot might have a little more security for this position. It's kind of interesting. If you were to go back and forth, notice the tone on the dominant leg in this pose. Of course, we're going to be adding that side sage, so we're already going to the right. We're tilting right. So when you hold onto the left knee, if you are holding the knee or just below the knee, for most training purposes, the guide would be below the knee, right? Because if you're doing resistance work, you usually want something that's quite a bit below the knee, close to the ankle when you push away. But for this one, we're giving it our individual reactions, right? You might let the leg go a little right, maybe a little bit towards you by pulling it. And then maybe you work with your hips, like you're moving your tailbone in, a little bit of a pelvic tilt. Does that matter? Probably feels different if you do any movement in the pelvis. Now, when you start to move your right hand off of that left knee, feel, come back to center, and still you feel, but uncross. And this left leg, right, this hip, these two hips were in a certain specific position. So when I move the ball away, I'm going to put it between my knees and just squeeze it. If you got a block, use a block. But the ball has a responsive surface, right? So you're actually getting some awareness illuminating in the adductor. So you push into the ball with all your might and let the rest of the body pretend that nothing's going on. It's very calm, easeful, but that center of gravity is so toned. Okay, arms back overhead. We're going to work on coming up to sitting. So I want you to scoot your feet a little forward so it's not as difficult in your hip flexors. And then as you bring your arms up to the ceiling, start the process of squeezing and squeezing. Not that you ever let up on that. And you're going to work your way possibly to sitting up. And then bring your hands down beside your hips and work with the shoulders back and just sitting up. I know it seems like trying to get my waist to lift is a tiny challenge. Okay, so squeeze the ball, slide your feet forward so that it's realistic for your whole body. So hold on to the ball with a little more dedication, pushing in. Legs are really warm. Breathe. And then relax the grip. Let your back go a little rounded to move the ball, but very subtle, not too much rinsing of the back yet. And then we'll turn to our right hip and we'll move our bolster across and we'll prep our block overhead over to the other side of the blankets. And now when you come into the side sage, it's up to you if you have a ball or a block on the inside of the left knee. Now, the sliding back is quite popular and may be useful for your linking of your knee to your hip and then all the way through the side. Okay, so kind of notice the link, especially if this outer hip gets the sand. So now we come into side sage. And whenever you're ready, add a little bit of weight, whatever it might be, whether it's a couple pounds of some sort of a bag that you have that you heat up, or, you can add those things to your class. And as you have that side range, if it gets a little bit tingly in the leg, that means you're going too far back with the leg moving from the hip behind you. But if it's the skin and the focus on the ball that's a little bit awkward, you might work on feeling the extended reach with the upper arm and really get this wide, this elongation. Actually, it's not wide, it's a narrow, right, lengthening shape, and emphasize the shapes, right? You're a bunch of shapes. Yeah. With the brain at the top. Okay. Depending on what pose you're doing, right? Your brain might be below. But feel when you kind of jog your memory of these poses, you do a pose by memory, even if you're learning it each time again. So noticing what you visit with your breath in the rib cage, can you keep the length sideways long? And maybe your head rolls to the back on the blankets. Maybe you like your head tilted down and resting. Breathing slow. With the ribs. Feel the natural connection of the props on top, even if it's half of the rib ridge that gets the sand. It'll spread through the body. That's all that it does, right? The breath is a spreading sensation. Using it as a stretching tool. So a few more moments here. Really try to set up your right leg so it's hugged up close to the bolster. Good. Now, as we move our pelvis, feel what it's like. These are the very subtle things that are hard to see on a screen, right? So they're very subtle nuances of moving in and out of a shape. So feel the side of the feet, right? That's another part of this, the inside, the outside of the foot. This has been a little bit of a topic today, is the feet. So when the arm is reaching, we're going to be letting the bone structure start to work its way around and upwards. So we'll move the arm from behind you. If you got a block overhead, you might as well move it a little bit to the side. Just be aware of your deltoid because you are pulling something. because if you move the block, it might pull across the really thick muscle there. So you'll let the hand help move the sand. And then as you rotate to the right, feel how your body kind of hugs the bolster. I think we can always work more on hugging our bolster with our core, not like always the arms, but let this core be pretty supple. So roll in, it's only going to be useful for the organs, right? Supple core, roll in, and then come up. And I think we should have the blankets that distance away. Yeah, we'll push them around a bit, but come on up to sitting. If you need to shake it out or have a tantrum while you're getting up, that's okay. Or shake out the legs, not just the arms, but get a feel of your seat on top of the bolster. And then when I sit center, the left foot is going to move in towards the right leg. And when your legs are kind of flopped down, the hip is going to start opening up through the legs, right? The hip supports the movement. So we'll stretch the right thigh out into the foot and then put something under your left knee. Could be a block, it could be a ball, but something, unless you have such an open hip and adductor that your knee just touches the ground, wham, and there's no restrictions. But if there's even a slight amount of kind of lift up, it's just structurally not touching comfortably, then you likely need something. You just need something. So take it. And then add a sandbag to the upper left leg. Get sand or some kind of weight. Feel if this sand kind of rolls the thigh open, so it has direction. And then this right leg, some of us, the hyperextension starts to come along. So feel what ray out from your kind of 12 o'clock spot, what ray of movement of the right leg is working so that your spine can have its natural arch, but you could sit up, right? So if I have my leg too far out or too far forward, I round. So I push it out, and then we're going to get really held up here. We're going to take our belt, and you're going to, where's my buckle? That was a big loop I had before. Okay, so we're going to buckle up, and we're going to make a little, those buckles can sound very, very strong in these recordings. So you're going to make a little loop, just a little bit. So you put it over your right foot. You put your foot in the loop, or the loop around the foot. And then you make the belt so it's behind your left or right leg, sorry. Your left hand holds the belt, and then your left arm can have lots of range, right? It's not very cramped up. It's very supportive. So feel when the left rib cage turns. And I sometimes like to hold the belt so it's like kind of right up, my hand is up to my ribs and my elbows back. I feel a little more concentrated there. But when you range it back, it might start to develop a little bit of tone in the back of the arm here. So notice now if it's a shoulder issue and that's too much, then it's too much, right? You might go, I'm not using the belt, I'm gonna put my hand on the blanket, and that's good. So you make that decision if you're gonna hold the belt or not. So you reach for the left knee and you twist. And your options for the neck are a few. You can center, you can turn your head a little to the left, make sure that the belt is not so far stretched out, you can't actually hold the stretch, right? So if it's flailing and you're rounding your back, it's not close enough in. And that left arm is rotating, so you have external rotation, it's not internal on the shoulder. Now, when you tilt, the option two would be, you're gonna feel what would happen with your neck if you tilt your head a little to the right. And you can also work with tilting your head a little to the left. So neck stuff, right? This is a good one for the neck. Now, of course, we're not going to put our chin to our chest, so that's the no-no. But you might find, oh, that feels good when I tilt my head to my left side for my right arm and my neck. And maybe this left side when the right ear draws to the shoulder, knowing that your goal is not to touch your shoulder with your ear. That's Not a good idea to strive for. I don't think it's going to happen even. I don't think your ear is going to go to your shoulder. Let's see, you have a big earring on. Okay, so some of us have head right and center and up, and that's fine. So get the feel here when you're holding onto the belt and the strength is into that left arm. Turn your body back facing forward on your mat. And then take that right leg. I want you to hold the leg with the right hand. So just keep it right arm holding onto the right leg. And then can you actually keep the left hand centered and down, resting, and then work with the energy on that right side of the body, the right side of the waist to the right leg. Pull and lift up that right leg, and just notice, if you only have one arm to hold the leg up, it's not as much fun, okay? But it's certainly doing the exercise on one side with the arm and focusing on that lift of that right leg. So develop concentration in your stomach. If you're starting to feel a little winded in your back muscles or fatigue quickly, recruit that core body, bend the right knee, inhale so the heel touches down, and then exhale, lift up the right leg last time. Okay, you can always do one more of those. Now lower down and slide the belt off of the foot, and let's take a few moments here. We're going to be doing pigeon in a bit, but I want us to, I'm going to give some variations on these, is to bring the right knee open and place the foot on a block. Okay, so the right foot goes up on the block. Now, this kind of looks like some patterns that we do with our hip openers, because it is a hip opener. So if you have the sand option, move it over to the right leg, because it's the foot that's up. And then you'll take your block, other one, and take it over to the front left corner of your space and putting the hands on the block height that works for you, high, medium, low. And let the spine flow from a extended to a flexed spine. So that would mean my head lowers, and that increases that flexion. So by now the spine probably is begging for flexion. So give it a little bit of that motion. This is a little bit
Nicole, I have to leave. There's
Oh,
something wrong. There's something really wrong with my back, so I'm leaving the meeting.
okay.
Thank you, though.
Okay.
I'll be in touch.
Okay. Okay, so you get a feel. Is everybody else's back okay? Okay, things happen. Social group. All right. So as you lean down into that left side, you get a feel for the right corner of the hip, right? Feeling that position into that right hip. Okay, so what we're going to do is work our way to place the block over to the outer left side so we can make the band of movement from the right leg into the right side of the back. Left hand goes out on the block besides your bolster. And you do want to not go too close in, right? You don't want to, you want to give yourself enough reach with that left arm out from your bolster. And then you just let your ribs turn to the right and stretch your right arm over the side of your face so you have that full length through the side. That's important. Yeah, and let that side reach. We've all done it when we go seated side angle, right? So we seated and that side reach of the waist. So this kind of bands the waistband to lengthen from the hip through the ribs. Focal point here is through the arm. Okay, now as that right arm moves open and you sit up, we're going to take a pigeon pose. So move the sand off the right thigh. Now when that right leg moves back, you're going to pull your blankets in close and take the right leg back. And if you're not doing pigeon, I'll show you a variation. So those in pigeon, take right leg back. You've got 2 blankets under your right leg. If you do not like 2 blankets, slide one off. And then as you're reaching with the arch of the spine, you can start to lower down. And you might put a block under your forehead. There's so many ways of moving into this one that you can use a block right at the hairline. Okay. And you can move your arms any which way you want. Okay, to the right, to the center, but it would probably be just to the right or the center. Now, those that are still in this position, cross-legged, I want you to bring your feet together to Baddha Konasana, so cobbler's pose, seated on the bolster. And then reach your body weight forward. Take a few moments with that forward reach. This is the variation. And lean down so the adductors stretch. Be cautious here how close and snug your feet are to your bolster. You might need to move them a little farther out, depending on how it feels in your knees. This is a knee pose to support the knees. So if it's too close and it's too sharp of an angle on the knee, then it's uncomfortable for some people. So that's important. Of course, pigeon is going to be a different knee tracking. So lean down so the inner thighs really get that sensation and stretch. Pigeon still has some inner thigh work, right? Left thigh, but it's really swirling around the hip a little further. So with that density into the left hip, feel the focus. Let the L bones press. If you're down on the forehead, still feel the arms. You know, we're going to come back up. So whatever your position that was aligning into your hip and your legs, I know the seated pose is going to be a little intense. So when you do come up from the arched spine, you're going to come back to seated. So we get to the other side. I'm trying to keep the pose set so it's in some way very symmetrical. We're going one side to the next without a lot of kind of bumps in the middle of poses that are fit in, just because it's choreographically fun. We're doing it so it's alignment tuned up here. So I've got my left leg out and my right knee in that bending position. My sand is on the right thigh. And now take a reach with your belt. I think you got it already in a little loop. Okay, so you'll put the belt under the foot, left side, and you might have a habit of wrapping your belt around the skin on the top of the hand to kind of get that assertive reach, but this belt belongs to your right hand for this pose. So we're going to reach the belt behind us, slide it up, hold it with the right hand, and then turn to your right with the left hand on the just above the knee, unless you have an arm reach that comfortably holds the knee. And that's going to change your stomach circulation if you're holding firm to that right leg. So rotate and give that right arm some range of motion. If it's getting a little bit iffy on your shoulder, right, then you might back off and bend your elbow, but stay with this core ribbon lifting. So you want to keep this lift, like as if you have something right up in the armpits and it's moving you up. You want to have that sense of that inner lift. Push into the left foot. This is such a good spiral line position. It takes some energy and discipline. So giving this whole final part of the set some focus, breathe. It only helps. Noticing how the body feels with that arm back. Okay, now the neck might tilt left ear to shoulder or right ear to right shoulder or no ear tilting. You choose. You might like to emphasize the ribs, expressing inhale, filling up, and that almost moves your inner body upright or a little bit brightening the inside. And then the exhalation, letting go. So you're still in the awareness of spiral. And then come back to turn forward, slide the left hand away, the right hand loosens on the belt. And then we just hold the left leg forward with the left hand on the belt. And we're not holding the toes of the foot, right? But our belt is engaging all the way to the base. So when you're lifting up that left leg, feel the muscles in the low back of the waist. Maybe they are not challenged, right? You might not feel a real deep challenge in the low back of the waist, but feel that lift through the leg. Breathe. Now really experience that motion in the low back waistline. Now, if you feel the back of the leg lengthening, work with that. And as you start to bend through the left knee, I want you to take one more moment of inhale. And as you push into that left foot, try to work with bending the left elbow to refresh the bicep. I guess it's not refreshing a bicep, it's toning the bicep. And the hand, a little weary. That one-sided lifts are challenging. And then as you bend through that left knee, you're just going to curl through the hip into the foot. So the foot turns out the leg, taking the belt off. Get the block under that left foot. And then take your other block over to the top right corner and lean into it. Oh, I forgot. Change your sand over the left thigh. So move the sand across the leg beam. And if you need to adjust your condition of your seat on your bolster, you can do that. Or if you're in a recliner chair, whatever prop you decide to use at home, you can kind of play with that, huh? So as you lean down, work with the exact amount of lift at the back of the waist, motion down through the exhalation. Yeah, we're trying to use that sand weight on that upper thigh. So with the phase of time, remember, restorative works best if you dedicate the time and the shape to induce that circulation shift, even if it's simply for a little bit of time, and then when you come out, maybe it fades sensation wise, but it still is, you still have that awareness that had like a seed planted in the area, right? So right now it's going to be also in the kidneys, low back of the waistline, and then around towards the spleen. Slide the block in and then take the sand off. Those that are coming back to pigeon are going to move the left leg back. And if you're not going to go to pigeon, you're going to take both of the feet out to a little bit of a wider stance, right? Wait a minute here. I forgot something, didn't I? Cheryl's giving me a look. I did forget something. Don't pigeon yet. Okay. Come back to the foot on the block. We won't say this recording. We'll take our block out to the right side. Remember this? Okay. Left arm stretches over. Okay. Might as well be real where we're at here. So left arm reaches over. Yeah, so Sharon, if you kind of ventured into that other pose modification, then come back to the foot on the block if you can. And then lengthen the left arm over the side of the face. If you have a wall that's in your way, you might work with the limitation of the block closer to you, but this is important for the back, right? So after Mimi's call out, it's like we gotta let the body iron out from each pose. So your head might turn down to the right arm. Feel the length. Breathe. Okay, now as that left arm sweeps back behind you, you'll slide back up. If you haven't already decided you're going to pigeon, last moment, you could have been there, but you'll bring your left leg back. Right, so just be aware there's nothing back behind you but blankets. And then come down to pigeon, right knee is open, lower down. So you form that crease at the hip. Okay, we'll be here for a little bit. Those that don't want to go to pigeon will have the feet in a wide stance, so they're on the sides of the mat. Both legs are in this extended out position. And then reach your blocks, both of them, because you might as well use two. If you've got two, you got two hands, you have two blocks, you got two legs. So you lean forward to stretch out the back. So that's the other option. If you do not want to crease at the knees, that's okay. This is no knee creasing position. It's more of a knee greasing position, right at the back of the leg. But for some of us, it's not going to get the hip, right? So if we can go with a pigeon, we try it out if it works for you. So lean down if you're in a wide stance position, feet are out, head is down. Okay. If you're in the pigeon pose, the right knee is open, the left leg is back. And the hands are centered down. So feel where that arch is through the waist, through the spine. Okay, now as you start to come back from that arching position, toes under left foot, and then start to slide the weight back. So you're going to come back to hands forward, feet back, and alternate bending your knees. So when you get a feel of the knees bending one at a time, feel the reach from the bottom of the foot. And we want to be a little careful that we're not sliding out of the position for the leg. So take a wide stance, okay, with the leg muscles reaching back. Notice if you do feel stretch anywhere above the calves, right? If you feel anything up into the hamstrings or the whole layer of skin from the rounded rear right into the back of the knees. So approach this from this awareness of feeling. And now when you lower down, I think one blanket is plenty when you're on hands and knees. It's almost better for the hips not to have that much of a push up. So what we're going to do is take our bolster way forwards, okay? Take a blanket down away from the height, so you've got one. And now when you're reaching your hands on the flat surface, you're going to take a wide reach with the palms and then lengthen the front body and move into that variation of core reach. It might have a name, but we're going to go with that core reach. Or coral reach. Okay, so feel where the range is in the hip, belly, the hip belly. Okay, now come back to table and then let the flesh of the back really work into flexion. So round the back, feel that motion of rounding and arching. So you feel an alternating pattern of movement through the spine. Okay, and now as you come back to table, I want you to bring your hands on top of your bolster. So I've got my bolster wide. I'm going to reach my hands forward and let my seat move back, head between the arms. Feel the developing sensation in the arms and that lift. And now manage the length in the back of the waist. And as you round your back, I want you to feel that the hands aren't something you're pushing into, but the arms are truly lengthening. So you might need to slide your bolster a little bit closer so that you're not kind of feeling like you're completely swung out of the center. So you feel the arms on the bolster, and you'll round your back so the chin tucks to the chest. So you're moving from flexed to extended spine. Notice this movement in the upper back, then slide the hands off the bolster and round your back to cat with as little pressure into your palms. So I want you to spider the hand so there's no pressure in your heels of your hands. So you open up the hand, the fingers, so you have a little bit of a cup of a lift under your hand. But you've got to activate the fingers on that one. So you'll have your feet apart, round your back, chin to chest. And then as you arch the spine, be very careful here at the position of the wrist. So my hands are still spidered. And then as I exhale, chin to chest, spine rounds, inhale, arch the spine. Okay, now when we come back to table, we're going to hook the toes under and feel the hands open and then push to lift up your knees. Walk your feet forwards and walk your hands back until you meet near your feet, and take a forward fold so you're in an inversion. Head is below the heart and your hands hold your elbows. So let the arms go low and the spine completely reach from the back of the pelvis. In fact, you might work with bending the knees a little bit further so that you can feel that open space in the back. Even if your legs can go straight and you're extremely mobile, see if you can focus on that core section, lengthening into the back. A few more moments here. Breathing, emitting that exhalation, letting the head relax. Notice the weight into your feet, okay? So that's something to be just clear on right now, is the weight in your feet. Right, we'll do that when we have our legs up with Sam. So kind of feel, what does this feel like in your legs, all the way up into your buttocks, all the way to your glutes. Do you feel that energy all the way through the seat? And then as you disperse your hands, you're going to bring the hands back forward. And this time I want us to lower down. I like to kind of swiggle my feet a little side to side to go down to my knees, but turn your bolster. So it's going to be right under you as you lie forward with your belly down and your heart maybe slightly touching the bolster, but the elbows are now sliding forwards and down as you reach your ribs front. So you're in Sphinx pose. And so let the top muscles in the bands of the legs relax. So feel if you can isolate the front of the thighs so that they're completely kind of hanging in there from the hip points. And then noticing if the tops of the feet touch down. And then the energy circulates up the back of the legs into the buttocks. Okay, so we're going to come up into a baby back bend. So you can stay with this position. This is pretty good, solid. You're not going to go wrong in your back here because you have the proper energy source now from your elbows touching down to support the chest. Okay, but feel the hook in the back, like feel from the back of the heart, right, that mid-thoracic, all the way up to the space between the shoulder blades. Pretty close area, isn't it? And then stretch the hands back, so that area can stretch a little bit as the shoulders move down. And you'll lift up a little bit higher. So now it's a little more intense in your back. So you're strengthening. Okay. Now lower down, so the elbows come back forward for all of us. Let your chin tuck towards your chest. Now can you keep the chin tucked in, then slide the hands back. Okay, so the chin is in. You only go so far down towards your chest, huh? And now when you try to lift up, you're just a little more limited, but quite aligned for your spine. Breathe. Good. Now strengthen the back. Feel the back flexing. When you push up into your waist stretching, come back to table and round your back to cat, chin to chest. Move, flow from a flexed spine. Okay, now feel how the back muscles are right now. Now bring the knees together and step your right foot to the top right corner of your mat so your left thigh stretches down. Now feeling how the front of the left thigh lengthens. Switch the right knee back and the left foot to the top left corner. Right thigh is elongating. Not necessarily does it feel like it's just one leg, because your left leg gets a stretch too. Always a bonus. Okay, now we're going to come into legs up. So you're going to pivot your bolster across the mat. Walk your left foot across towards the right side of the bolster, or the right side of everything. Take a seat and then take the right leg forward. And then as you uncross, you're going to, I don't know if you'll need to move your blanket that much behind you, but a little bit. And then as you come up with your legs up, have your props, nearby. We won't know if we're going to use them exactly with our timing here, but we'll see. So I want you to center on your bolster so your pelvis backing is you can feel the hook of the tailbone when you lower back. That hook is kind of shifting, and so your tail is in. That's a common conversation in yoga, is that tail is in, tail, all this tail stuff. So there's a tall tail. So when you move your knees up, get a feel here when the knees draw in and you add some weight to the bottoms of the feet. Even if you're choosing to go sand free, I want you to have something at the bottom of the feet, and it could be a belt. So if you decide not to use the sand or you don't have it, then put a belt under the feet and have the elbows down to the floor so there's no pressure in your shoulders. It's just the focus of the feet pushing, okay? So as your legs are in this tall position, feel the connectivity at the back of the pelvis as if you're letting the back of the pelvis press into the bolster. So that ends up bringing your feet usually a little forwards. Yeah, but verticality is good here. So resting the organs, feel where the elbows move open and back into the hands. And give yourself some mild motions of breath. And as we explore inverted poses, we're going to do a couple here. And we'll focus on specific shapes, not as many, but get a very clear understanding at where this places circulation for the breathing muscles, right? The diaphragm. So as you inhale, right, you've got the abdominal organs steady right on top of the diaphragm right now. So you're actually having to push against that resistance. And then as you exhale, it's easier to have a longer exhalation because of that weight internally, right? You can't really change that weight unless there's more volume in your body internally. Flexing the feet, legs are very straight. Maybe you need a little separation at your knees. Just kind of notice if they're pushing together. We want each leg to feel structurally steady. Give it a few more moments. Remember, if you have a belt, it's covering both of your feet, and you have a little bit of a pull with your hands tightening that belt under your feet. and continuing that stretch at the leg. So we understand that we get to a point with the inversion where we're stimulating the immune system because of that flush of the inner leg in the groins, that lymphatic tissue. So as you start to soften through both of the legs, feel the crease at the back of the knees and the mild amount of pressure. Now it might loosen when you bend your knees around the tailbone because it swings the hips away from your upper back. Right now you're lifting your rear up a little. So as you lower down your feet and you take your sand opportunity away, I want you to let your knees point up in their comfortable path of pushing forward, and then put a ball or a block between the knees. And start to move the knees side to side. Once that object is between the knees, you're going to go side to side. Stretch the arms straight open and loosen up the strand of the back of the waist into the hip. So get a feel of motion in your back muscles. Maybe a little bit into your hip. Now, the farther you go over to one side, you might sense the knees reaching across. So I want you to use this kind of fertile ground for moving the hips. Since you are lifted on a bolster, you actually have a little bit more rebound quality, right? You have a little bit more swing into the hip. So use this to stretch your back. Of course, going slow is ideal, not a fast, rushed crossing over side to side. So this final set, right, we're working with the hips and inverted pattern, right, reversing the flow of gravity inside. Now, next time you come in center, unless you want to keep going with that, if that feels really nice and mobilizing for your joints, you can keep going. But as we move along, ideally, we're going to bring our knees to our chest, and hopefully that ball won't bonk your forehead. But as you move your knees in, you're going to move the bolster away from under your seat, and the bolster will be near you in hand's reach. Push it away solid, and then place your feet on top. Heels are going to dig into the bolster as you lift your hips up. Blanket under your head is an option. If it's feeling not comfortable, you might end up sliding it away for the time being. So lift up your hips, and it's key to try to get your hips up a little higher unless it bothers your knee. So if you're feeling, well, that's tough on my knee, it might be that your feet are too close underneath your knees, too far in towards your hips. So you could push your bolster farther away. That's usually helpful. Now, if my spine lowers down without any radical scoop of my tail, I just let it go down. My spine lowers, it's comfy. And now, hopefully you find that too. And as you feel the length of your thick back ribs, bring your hands so that they're at the thighs, top of the thighs, resting the palms there. And as you push into your thighs, try to push so much that it's a little awkward. So you're not lifting up your hips quite yet. You're pushing into the thighs. And then as you slide the skin of the thighs towards the knee, you're going to lift up your hips, but keep that firm pressure with your hands on the thighs and lift up the hips. Yeah, the tush has to lift up. That's the challenge, is getting those to lift, right? And that's via the connection into your feet, and the bolster makes it a little easier to get higher, and the arms go back overhead. So reach with both, feel the hips lifting, lengthen the front body. Now your head again might not want to be on a blanket, so if it's starting to feel a little scrambly in your neck, then you want to remove that. Okay, now as you bring your arms back forward, I want you to place them back to your thighs and then push and let your spine lengthen down. Bring the knees to the chest, take the ball away, and we're going to windshield wiper the knees so the feet are on the bolster and the knees go side to side. Feel when the knees go to the sides, either one, noticing the connection into your hip and then the rib slightly, right? A slight at the ribs. Okay, let's take our final set here of motions where we decide if we want to use our bolster besides us or in front of us under our feet. So everyone has a choice with this. Now, it's old school, right? Where we would take our left leg over the right leg and we bring our knees to the right. And that's a little different on the knee shelf and the hip sheath, right? It's different in these zones. Okay, I've kind of branched to a little bit more fundamental pose pattern where I put the bolster to the right and I take the left leg over to the bolster. And if you need a blanket on top, you have one to add. And then here, I put a ball, if I have one, at the sacrum, and then my sand to the outer left. Sand is overhead, outer left thigh. So you choose. Now, it's not wrong to have the leg in that crossover position at the bolster under your feet, but it's not for everyone's knees, right? It's pretty deep angle on the knee joint. And, you know, as the knees mature, and they will just mature, might not be a good choice after all. So you can make that decision. If your structure makes it really easy and you flop into that shape, it's likely a little different for some people. So we're all a little unique with that in the knees. But most of us have some sort of complaint, whether it's knee or shoulder. It seems to be a dominant complaint in senior group. So the right and the wrist, you know, that's another part too. So let the right knee bend and see if you can bring that foot maybe a little bit higher up so it's a clear twist in the stomach and the ribs. And feel if you can let your head maybe turn left, flow the ribs open to the arm. If your left leg just is not quite secure, you'll use your sand, but keep in mind if it's too much, still you want to have a blanket in addition to your bolster. So if you can't get that left leg to be calm, and it keeps sliding, then it's just not high enough. You can also put a block underneath, right? Some people will lift up their leg, put a block, and that does a good job too. So up to you. Come into the shape for a few more moments. Try to really clear through the hip and be pretty soft with the angle. Now, articulate the motion of that left arm close by your side. And then move the ball and then kind of feel maybe a little vulnerability with the hip if the ball goes away. But when you start to slide your sand in any of the props, I want you to bring the sand to the belly and roll onto your back. You're already on your back, but roll your hips to the back space. Feel that left and right side different. It's a difference in the back of the pelvis usually. And then move your bolster to the left side. Okay, final quote unquote active pose. Now, if you did not go with this idea at all and you were on your bolster with your feet, right, you'll cross the left leg over and then you'll bring the knees over towards the left side. Otherwise, we'll let the bolster go to the left, we'll move it over there. And if you want to put a blanket on top, you can do that. And then you'll add your right leg over on top of that bolster, cross it, And with that cross leg, you add a sandbag and a ball to the sacrum. If you don't have a ball, then you just don't have one to use. That's basic. But you use the props you might have around. And then you want to kind of use the balance of the bolster underneath you. You can kind of repurpose some of these sometimes, but I really try to get my leg so it is hugging into that bolster. I think the blanket is a good idea to add. If your leg is wandering and there's a very subtle slide down, then it needs more height. It's just the fact of your flexibility. So that's okay. Yeah, so as you turn your head to the right side, come into the shape, feel the body loading. And part of this is the patience that you're providing for your bones, your circulation, and your mind. And that can be the most challenging part of the practice at home, is the possibilities with your time. So give yourself a little more focus and let your head roll to the right or back into center and breathe. Inhale for a count of 4. And empty for a count of 5 to 6. Now with those hips mobilized, we want to have that even timing, but also even circulation when we go to our final position. So you might scan the awareness in your lower back. And if you don't want to get up to move your props, then don't, right? You can sort them out here from your back or your side. It's not that difficult. So if your back is feeling a little weary, it's done a lot of movement, it's recovering, right, and restoring, you might stay with your back on the floor and barely lift many things, just scoot them around with your feet. So those people that want to stay with back here will move the ball away. And then the sand is for certain to go. And you might take your bolster and be able to push it down. Remember, we came down out of that first side where we lied back and just kind of felt the difference on the back of the pelvis. So you might put your bolster down under the legs if you're choosing this version. Now, I know some of you might put a block set underneath your bolster, so you have a bolster bench, which is fine. But sometimes if you're needing to cover up, if you're cool, this would be a moment to put some more height over you, or some weight, a blanket, something that lifts up over the body. But otherwise, come into a reclining state, placing the sand finally for that sandbag breathe. And as the sand is across the ribs or down from the heart to the belly, one or the other, flow the arms open, and keep in mind something under your legs is important, so the heels float, and some weight on you to ground your body, levelize your breathing, and your eyes resting back into the brain. And however the legs end up in a position where they deliver comfort into the back. Nothing wrong with simply being in Shavasana, relaxation just here. Core moves with the breath. Yeah, scanning the body and feeling the movement of the breath and possibly the experience settling into the bones. And if this feels like you had enough circulation for this type of work, right? It's different than movement out in the world, but it's inner work. Internalizing the practice. Now allow the leg motions to stay fairly centered and internal, right? So to come up, you usually have to move a knee or internal or external, but feel how the spine line is naturally arched no matter how you try to push it flat. There's a natural arch to the back. So if you have sand, you'll remove that. And then as you peel the legs off of the bolster, you'll bring a knee into a chest. Only one chest, two knees. Right, so we've got lots of pairs and lots of single units in the body. In this small package that you are, rock the knees side to side, either hold the back of the legs, whatever's cozy for your back muscles. Try to take a few moments to soothe the back. No requirement to come up to sitting at all. If you decide you want to come up and kind of join the collective for a uniting breath, or you can stay on your back if you prefer. So as the knees go to the side, be honest what you want to be with, and then come on up for some of us and find a seated place to perch your hips up onto. The blankets are usually seated. Okay. Feel where there is an angle at the knees and the lower bones of the legs. And then the hands move to the legs to roll the shoulders back. So find what's soothing for you. It might be rolling your shoulders. It might be reaching around to your shoulders and hugging them and massaging them, like massaging the arms a little bit. That can sometimes be nice to do. And then let your hands meet to a pattern of connection at each other, palms pressing, feeling as the brain lowers down to bow into your heart space. And considering each of us that commit to a practice, discipline, see if you can acknowledge each person's effort to be within practice